How do you know what leadership looks like if you don't see it? Well, you just look at the product and the end result. I'll tell you what I mean and how it pertains to the Jaguars in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I don't hear nothing but facts when I hear her say it is your team every day. And we appreciate you and thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. Shout out to the everydayers that join us each and every day on Locked On Jaguars. You are definitely appreciated, like my man Tupac said, R.I.P. to Pac. We are also welcoming new listeners. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully I'll give you a reason to come back and you can be an everyday or two. Make sure you slide over to Amazon Music so you don't miss an episode ad-free over on Amazon Music. You don't want to miss an episode wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, every single episode. Like the one that you're listening to right now. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, here's what we're going to do, man. I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown and let you know where we're headed before we start on our journey here for the next half hour. Perfectly aligned operation. That's so far what I've seen. And when I say perfect, it does not mean everything has gone perfectly. It just means from the standpoint of somebody in the media and a fan, it cannot have gone any better so far in the first year of the new regime. We'll discuss that. Liam's voice is the biggest. That is it. It is a one voice operation, but it's not like a bully pulpit. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Silent but present leadership between two people I don't talk about much on the show, Tony Boselli, the EVP, and the owner, Shad Khan. Shout out to them both. And I'll start with Shad because this is where all of this originated and started. Do y'all remember the day when Shad moved on from Doug Peterson to kept Trent Baalke? What I said when I came on here, I don't even want to replay it because I'm almost ashamed of myself a little bit that I got so emotional. I said he was the worst owner in pro sports. And had he not changed his mind a few weeks later, I probably would still feel that way. But I will admit, and I have in the past, that was a little bit emotional. For that, I apologize for letting my emotions come out of my mouth without any filter. But we are from Duval, and sometimes that's exactly what we do. Because I praised him 3 weeks later, and I said, there you go. You're not the worst owner in pro sports. The reason why, and the thing that elicited that emotional response, true or false as it was the fact that, look, man, we need to start this thing over and get people in line. We don't need to be like the Jets. Well, they kind of started over, but then they kind of didn't. But we don't need to be like these other teams. You know what? I'm searching for teams that this is like. Let me guess. The Jaguars, that's right. When they fired Urban Meyer and they hired Doug Peterson and they kept Trent Baalke. That's the team. When they hired Urban Meyer and they kept Trent Baalke, who was the assistant GM, and they didn't just make a clean sweep. And it has nothing to do with whether or not I think Trent Baalke was a bad GM or not. We don't need to go into that because that might just muddy the waters here. But what it does mean is whether he's good or bad, you have to have a coach that is in line and aligned with the draft selections, the choices that they make. And the fact is that outside of Shad Khan, Trent Baalke was number one, the alpha. He was the start. He was the alpha and omega. He was the beginning and the end. He was the dude that made all of the choices. He was the guy who was in a leadership position, whose voice you did not hear very often. As raspy as it is, you didn't hear it very often because we used to say, Shad, where are you? Come on and talk. Shad shouldn't have to talk. I don't want to hear from owners. I criticize Jerry Jones for that all the time. Doesn't have to speak. But the team should have spoken for him, and they weren't. And the dude that was in charge, he wasn't speaking either. And then when you were asking Doug Peterson questions, he was saying, I ain't going to explain that because you wouldn't understand it anyway. And we didn't understand what the hell we were looking at either, to be honest. So at some point, as a dude that has to sit here and communicate and answer fans' questions, I don't take the responsibility. Well, I do take it as a big responsibility, but I'm not claiming any of that stuff because, hell, even I did not know a lot of the answers. Now, I know a lot of this was shrouded in losing, but just remember now, yeah, they were 4-13 that last year, but they were 9-8 the 2 seasons prior to that. But this was still going on. In fact, this was actually going on way before Doug Peterson ever showed up. I didn't come here to take you on, to give you a hangover. I didn't come here to take you back. I didn't come here to be the dude that talks to you after you lose 40 pounds and say, yeah, you used to be fat. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I am saying is sometimes when you have to and want to appreciate where you are, you have to really, really remember where you came from, okay? What they are now is aligned. Shad Khan's presence speaks loud and clear, and he ain't said a word. He talked to, Demetrius. I think he talked to Brent Martineau when they were all in London. I think Ryan O'Halloran. He spoke, but he didn't have. All he did was confirm when he spoke. He didn't have to come out and talk. You're not hearing people say, "Shad, tell us what's going on," and people say, "Well, it's because they were winning." Well, they were winning in 22 and 23, and people were saying that because there's nothing left to be desired that you have to understand from a higher authority because the team, Liam Cohen, his loud voice, the activity, the actions, whether they win or lose, the transparency, the messaging, it has all improved. And I have often said that when the messaging, if we see that the messaging is wrong, what do you think the players see? And now, more importantly, what does this new group of players do and talk about? What has the social media team really, really shown us? And what they've shown us is this: we're going to be transparent in wins, in losses, in our triumphs, in our trials. We're going to show you every single step of the way, and we're not going to cherry pick anything. And when Liam Cohen talks, he doesn't run from smoke. He tells you exactly what, and what this is this is not about just informing people that don't have a need to know. What this comes down to is being so sure about where you're going, what you're trying to accomplish, the decisions and the choices that you make, whether they are good or bad. He stood right there and he's looked down the gun barrel and he's answered those questions. He's talked about drops. He's talked about how Trevor needs to do things better. He's openly said how they were transparent about onboarding Travis Hunter and this quest and this new thing that they're trying to do with him as a football player that everybody has an opinion on, but they ain't the ones that got to sit here and implement it. And they don't even understand exactly what it is like day to day down there. They're not involved in meetings. All they're going about is a visual that they had when the dude played in college, and this ain't college. Newsflash. Okay. So there's been a bunch of things along the way, right? But the one thing that has not been missing is next man up. The one thing that has not been missing is we got to play better. The other things that have not been missing are it's on me first. We didn't do a good job. We got to put them better in a better situation. We have to maybe slim things down a little bit. We can't keep having these penalties. We got to clean stuff up and then explaining what the stuff they have to clean up is. And then if it doesn't get cleaned up, come back and say, we still have to do better. It's on me. It's on this. This is accountability across the board. And when you're a fan, you're going to complain when things go bad like they did against the Rams. You're going to complain when they win games, even close games, despite the fact that they dominate them statistically, but then the score doesn't seem quite, it does not matter. See, this is a walk we're all going on together. And when you do it with full understanding and clarity, you can disagree on the why, you can disagree on what should happen. But the one thing you don't disagree on and the one thing that you don't argue about is what you don't know and why things are the way that they are, because the messaging is very, very clear. It's clear because they have a good leader. You can put people in leadership positions and delegate authority and still have bad leadership. Put a blind donkey in front of a whole bunch of people and tell him to pull the carriage. And if you don't know where he's going, he's the leader, but he's taking you off a cliff. So what they have now is they have a leader, they have a voice. And Liam Cohen is the man for the job, and I'm going to discuss him and his voice and the one voice mentality that the Jaguars seem to have, and we'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overage, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. What makes it special, man, is there's just no BS. I'm tired of the BS when I'm dealing with these services, and Mint Mobile makes that very, very comfortable for me. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch to mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time, new customer offer for just the first 3 months only, and speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan, taxes and fees. Extra. See Mint Mobile for details. And today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. When it's time to get tickets to NFL games here in the middle of the season, honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. You need to go to Game Time. Let's just be honest, though. Getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping all over the place at checkout. It can be very frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see, well, that's the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, man, we're moving and grooving here on a Friday on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Always appreciate you making us your first listen here for Jaguars coverage. Liam's voice is the biggest. Before I get to that, I'm going to say this one time, and I ain't going to mention no names. And it ain't like I'm the dude that comes on here with a cape every single week to take up for people. But you got GMs around the league after trading one in particular, you know who he is. He ain't listening to me. I don't care. But we all heard him loud and clear talking about these young GMs doing fantasy football stuff and all of that. Man, let me tell you something. When you got to throw shade, something's wrong with you, especially when you're a favorite to win the AFC and you're sitting in the catbird seat. You know what? How about getting your team to the Super Bowl when you've been deep into the playoffs every year and not blaming somebody at the trade deadline because they have a different sort of resume than you do. I can't stand people to do stuff like that and take shots at people. And the Buffalo GM, that's exactly what he did. He did it in a sneaky way. And my thing is, y'all got to excuse me, but I hate bullies. Always hated bullies. Always been the dude to stand up and pull a bully's card. I did not care. I ain't never lost a fight, whether it be verbally. Well, I lost a verbal fight to my wife, but she ain't a bully. She just wanted her point heard. But I will tell you this. Manage your team the way that you manage your team, because you can't be sitting there pointing at people talking about their resumes and all of this other residue about how they got their job as if they don't work hard every day. You better watch your mouth, man. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know. And I'm not assuming that he's talking about James Gladstone, but I will tell you this. If he is, you know, when you can stick that stuff, you look weak. Bullies always look weak when you pull back the curtain. I'm going to leave it at that because that ain't what this show is about. But I kind of take it personal. And I'm glad we got James Gladstone, and I'm glad we got Liam Cohen, and I'm glad we got Tony Boselli. I don't care what their resume is. People talk about my resume. So what? Win football games and stop winning behind the microphone. Leave that stuff to people like me that talk for a living. All right, let me get on to the stuff I was going to talk about. Liam Cohen, Liam's voice is the biggest, and it should be. He's the one out front. He's the leader of this football team. He is the drill sergeant that makes this thing tick and go, right? At least from a fan perspective. This is what we want. Remember all the days Trevor Lawrence had to come like a little PR dude, like the White House press secretary, and make sure the natives didn't lose their mind? It came out, silence, we got it. While he should have been hanging around his teammates, learning to be a young quarterback, ingratiating himself. And I used to say, y'all keep rolling this dude out here just because y'all trying to hide your mistakes. I remember one time I thought when they had a running back issue that they tried to get Trevor to go out there, and I don't know if he refused to, but for some reason he was supposed to come out. And he was like, no, I ain't doing that today. Good for you. You should have never had to, because it should always be the coach. And it shouldn't be a coach standing up telling people what they will and will not understand. Shout out to Doug Peterson for saying what somebody will and wouldn't understand. You know what we didn't understand? We didn't understand why you didn't go help your quarterback when he got hit by a dirty hit. Everybody's talking about the coach from Houston being a hypocrite because when Trevor got hit, he protected his guy. And then when his guy got hit, he protected his guy. That's exactly what he should have done. I ain't mad at that man for doing that. I'm not going to let y'all get a pound of flesh out of my dudes. I don't care. That's exactly what I'm talking about. D'Amico Ryans. That's exactly what Doug Peterson should have done. That's why I go back to Liam Cohen. One, he's going to take up for his teammates because he's going to take up for himself, right? And I'm going to take up for the organization when they're doing right, and I'm going to take up for the city of Jacksonville. I'm going to take up for the fans because that's my job. I love the one voice mentality. You know who was like that? Tom Coughlin. It was one voice. You don't need to be talking to everybody around here. You want to find out what's going on. You talk to me because ultimately I'm responsible for it. And I think Liam thrives in that. And he thrives in it because he's not insecure. Like people that get on microphones and talk about other people's resumes because they didn't get a trade that they wanted. I'm going to keep going. See, this is what I am. This is the barbershop for a reason, because I'm always up in everybody's business. And the thing about it is, it's been a boot camp for 30 some odd years before I retired to make me this way. I learned a lot of lessons. And one thing I learned is don't let nobody step on your name and don't let nobody step on who you are. And the thing is when people need other people to speak for them, that means that they're not sure about what they're doing. And they don't want to explain it to you because they know there's no explanation for it. Liam Cohen has explained every single thing and left you without any questions. Everything that he's tried to do hasn't worked, and he's put it right on himself. You can't ask 53 young men that are active in whatever, how many people on the practice squad and your coaches. You can't ask people to be accountable if you're not willing to stand up there and first be accountable. He personifies leadership. There's a piece that's out right now with Liam Cohen that talks about the traits and the things that he picked up along the way. And I know we love to give Sean McVay all of the credit for him. Now, this goes back to when he was a little boy in the office with his dad around football coaches. It's similar to the Stoops story. I remember Nick Saban told a story that he was up talking to one of the Stoops uncles. I get a feeling there's like 30 of them, but this is one that nobody knew. He was an older guy that now this is the greatest coach in college football history, sitting in a diner writing plays down on the napkins with a Stoops family member that y'all never heard of. And it turns out the place got robbed and they were so into these plays they didn't even care, right? But this goes back to stuff like that. This goes back to just having football around you, eating, sleeping, drinking it every day. If Liam wasn't a man and he was a woman, he'd be that little girl on Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans, the coach? Not Denzel, but the other dude. And the little girl was telling her coach what should and shouldn't do. And all they did was talk ball every day. And then she even told Denzel she was talking ball to him. I think Liam Cohen was a little kid just like that, talking ball, hanging around people, learning ball. And now it's manifested itself. And he's right here as the Jaguars coach. And I couldn't be happier. Regardless how things turn out this Sunday against Houston, I think they're going to win. Regardless what these games look like, regardless of what comes out of his mouth is exactly what you see on the field. That's why Boselli ain't got to say a word. Shout out to my man, Tony Boselli, because he's done a great job too. Managing, navigating. Came out this week, James Gladstone came out and he addressed the elephant in the room real quick. And I'm going to paraphrase this. But when Gladstone came out and talked about acquiring Jakobi Meyers, His superpower is catching the ball, and we've had a problem holding on to the football. Period. Point blank in the discussion. It's the truth, and we know it. He ain't have to come out here and sugarcoat to save anybody who's been dropping balls as feelings. They know they've been dropping those balls. We know he's been dropping balls, and they went out and made a move for a guy whose superpower is holding on to the football. I mean, how easy is that, right? How easy is that? Your actions speak louder than anything you could ever say out of your mouth. And when you open your mouth, all you got to do is just talk about what just happened. And we'll accept it as fans, and we'll accept it as media people, because we don't think you're lying to us. We think it's the absolute truth. I'm going to tell you why this perfect alignment for me has been the absolute truth, and why it bodes well for the future of the Jaguars. I know they got a game in Houston Sunday, but this is a bigger macro picture. I want y'all to make sure y'all tap in just a second here as we complete today's episode, as we get ready for a game against Houston here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show and episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere. Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I'm going to go more on whatever Travis Etienne's rushing total is this week, because I think the Jaguars are going to give a healthy dose of the running game in Houston. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. It's good to have you here on Locked On Jaguars on a Friday as our team prepares to go to H-Town. I mentioned this on my national show that I did earlier. I got 2 daughters live in Houston. I hope the Jaguars go up and put Houston out of their misery. I'm not going to mention my baby's names because I don't want them people in Houston looking at them funny. They're in the service industry like I did. But shout out to my girls up in Houston. Big game this weekend. It's a game this weekend that the Jaguars can take another step in their maturity, because they got to beat a team that they're just better than, right? Happening with the Raiders this week, it's a backup quarterback. They have to look at Davis Mills like he's Warren Moon. That's who you're playing in Houston. You're not playing Davis Mills. You're playing Warren Moon. We don't need no Jake Browning situations where the backup quarterbacks comes out here and looks great. Usually when backup quarterbacks come in and they play, that first game, they always look like they're lights out, and then all of a sudden they fall off a cliff. That's what happened to Jake Browning, right? That's what happened to most guys. Jaguars need to make that happen immediately, right away. They've lost in the past to Davis Mills, so we can't do that. I want them to win the game, but whether they win this game or not, which I think they will, and they'll be 6-3, I believe the future is super, super bright for Jacksonville. I do believe, however, the steps that they're going to take, they took a huge step this year. After 8 games, they've already won more games than they won last year. We're not satisfied, though, right? Because we didn't wake up saying just be better than you are last year. Some fans did, but I always disagree with that. I always feel like you say, no, be as good as you're supposed to be and then better. Set a standard for yourself and do your best to exceed it. Because when you're asking guys that play certain positions, that's what you're trying to do. If you're the 4th receiver, you need to be trying to be the 3rd receiver, and you need to be trying to be the 2nd receiver, and you need to prepare like Parker Washington has, even though they signed people, drafted people, had people in front of them. No, you need to constantly be trying to prepare yourself to be better. And I do believe that the way that they acquire talent, this is exactly what the organization is doing. They're putting their best foot forward. They're trying to win every single day and every single moment. They're not sitting here celebrating. Maybe they are privately, but you don't see it that they're celebrating that they're exceeding people's expectations. They probably don't care one bit about that. They are trying to win today. They're trying to win today, not at the expense of tomorrow, but trying to win today. And this is the first time in a long time. And I say this with all due respect to Tom Coughlin. This is the first time since Tom Coughlin was here, the first time that I really, really felt that this is what they're trying to do. So much that I've adopted the word gritty as describing the Jaguars and how they're winning. And I know Tom said that on his second time through, but even then, when they had Jacksonville, they did something that I keep speaking about and against, like I did in the first segment. They kind of patched it up because they still had my good friend Dave Caldwell as the GM. There wasn't a real clear. Remember the Jalen Ramsey situation, and people were wondering who Jalen was mad at, and there's still some talk. Jalen says it wasn't Tom, it was Dave Caldwell. I got a little different story, but I'll take that one with me to my grave about who was really responsible for all the discourse. Remember the question I asked Doug Marrone? I said, "You and Jalen good?" He said, "Yeah, we're fine. Whoever he pissed them off, they need to come down here to the press conference and tell you why." Remember all of that stuff? You don't have that foolishness now. You don't have everyone CYAing. You know what that means. Cover your you know what. Everybody's in this thing together, man. Win, lose, good, bad, ugly, accountability. That is the only way that this organization is ever going to get to where it's supposed to get to. Shout out to Liam Cohen being the voice. Shout out for James Gladstone for managing the personnel and being able to line that up and being willing to go out and get competitive people to continue to compete and cause enough friction that'll cause combustion and propulsion eventually. Shout out to my science teacher, Dr. Waters. And shout out to Tony Boselli for being an even measured hand, a dude that got into this position, not just because of who he was as a player, but because of his passion for this organization and the things that he learned behind the scenes. And I told any and everybody when Tony got that job, I said, do not overestimate him based on what you think his character was on radio when he was doing radio and he was having fun. Do not overestimate how much he loves this team, this city, and how smart of a football person he is. And now everybody sees that. And shout out to Shad Khan. I don't care how long it took. He eventually made this happen. Look, we ain't won the Super Bowl yet. We've not made the playoffs. We haven't won the AFC South. But I do think if this organization continues to go down the path that it's on right now, it bodes well for the future of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not just the stadium of the future, the team of the future. So people can really see us for who we are, even though we don't care what they say about us in Jacksonville, because we absolutely know the truth. We don't have to do any talking. We now have an organization that we can be proud of and we can point to and say, there you go. You want to know who we are? There we are right there. And that's what we are. And it's all about complementary football. And it's all about a football team that actually complements the grit of this city. And I could not be happier. And I know Jaguar fans feel the same way. Enjoy the game this Sunday in Houston. Immediately after the game, win, lose, or draw, post-game show for me and the Jaguar Squad Show, new show on our network, hosted by my friend Mia O'Brien. I am an analyst along with Marquise Ogden. It's a 1-hour show. I know we record on Wednesdays, and we'll be here after the post-game, whether it's immediate. If it's a home game, it might not be directly immediate, but you're still going to get the same coverage from me. You're still going to get a Locked On Jaguars post-game show. Daily Locked On Jaguars shows each and every day, 5 days a week. Shorts, breaking news, nothing has changed. This is additional coverage for you with a little bit of a different format. I don't have to carry the weight. I can just come on and give my expert opinions. We're going to let Mia lead that show, and it is something that I am very proud of. It's been in the works for a very, very long time, and we talked about doing it last year, and the network has done this in other cities. We had a very, very good opening the other night. So make sure you check that out, and you can get it on this page. It's usually, when you go to YouTube, it's usually under live, and then you could also get it at Locked On Jaguars and Locked On NFL as well. Also, y'all know I got a national show each and every day called The Barbershop at 2 on the Locked On NFL page and network, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you check that out also. Busy. Enjoy this beautiful day and this weekend here in North Florida. If you're traveling to Houston, please, I wish you traveling grace. Be extremely careful and go Jaguars. I want you to run the Houston Texans out of that stadium on Sunday. Good luck. Hope the team stays healthy. We'll see you next time. We don't take you for granted. We're right at 29 and a half minutes, man. Never taking you for granted here. Glad that you joined us on Locked On Jaguars. Shout out to you. Hopefully the Jaguars get a win. Either way, we'll see you on Sunday.